that is in attendance this afternoon. It's lovely to see some familiar faces and also to meet others for the first time. This event sold out remarkably quickly, and I realise that not everybody may have had time to join us today, but you'll have seen the reminder in the chat that this session is being recorded. So hopefully anybody that misses the first 5 minutes or so will be able to pick up in that recording. The part of the session that is being recorded is the main presentation. We have allocated time today for a 90-meter session and also allowed some time for questions and answers. So it is just this formal presentation part that will be recorded. The purpose of the session today is to provide an introduction to the NextGen HN project and also a brief overview of our work to date. Today's session is targeted at the college sector, but we want to note that we are developing targeted sessions for other sectors as well. If you are attending in a non-college capacity today, you're very welcome to, and I'm sure you will get something out of this session. So to introduce myself, I'm Val Innes. I'm the Head of Service for Next Generation Qualifications and Standards, and I'm joined today by a number of co-presenters, Jane Henderson, Julie Parker and Rachel Baird. And rather than spotlight everybody just now, rest assured they will introduce themselves when it's time for their section. The final thing that I want to note on this slide is the fact that the events team are running our slides today. That keeps things nice and streamlined from our perspective, so thank you very much for doing that. The downside is that myself in particular may sound as if I'm giving a COVID briefing. As I say, next slide, please. So with no further ado, next slide, please. So I mentioned that we were going to have a Mentimeter session and that session isn't recorded. I'm just giving you the heads up just now that you have the menti.com website address and the code for today's session. We will put that in the chat and we will reinforce that at the end as well. So this isn't the only opportunity you get to dial in. We're just giving you plenty of prior notice. And I'm just pause. I see that going into the chat just now. So if we can move on to the next slide, please. And I'm going to hand over to you.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's absolutely lovely to have so many people with us today at the end of what I'm sure was yet another busy working day for you. This session, as Val explained, is all about what the NextGen HN project has been up to, but we wanted to start with a question really for you today. Experienced people in the room, and we would love to start off with an activity which we'll do through chat. And so into the chat box, could you please tumble out of your heads what you would most like to change about our current HNs, and put in as many responses as you like, be as frank as you like, and be as detailed as you like, and hopefully through the chat stream, you will start to see the responses of your peers and colleagues across the sector. So let's just get some of your thoughts out there right now at the start of today's session. What would you like to change about our current HNs? I am really interested to see absolutely immediately a focus on reducing assessment, getting rid of over-assessment, repetition of assessment. Assessment's more practical. That's an interesting one. Yeah. Really nice to see that emphasis on meta skills, some familiarity with that already. Yeah, fewer closed book examinations. Authenticity, that's a really, really interesting one. It's great to see so many people typing. And also, can I just say, it's lovely to see some names from past lives in other colleges. So an especially warm welcome to you. Flexible frameworks, absolutely reflecting industry, integration of assessments. Great. Really interesting to see those themes coming up consistently. Reducing assessment, better tie-in with current industry activity. Yeah. Units which are future-proof. That's that's the dream. Fantastic, folks. Tess, I can see you've been typing for a long time. I'm going to be really interested to see this coming up in the chat.
No pressure.
No pressure. Great stuff. Okay, well, they've stopped flooding in there. So thank you so much. I mean, keep putting these thoughts in. We allowed a couple of minutes for this activity, but that's probably taking us towards enough time. I think I'll hand back over to Val, but keep that thought in your head, and please don't feel that you can't still type in a response to that question in the meeting chat. Fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts about what you would most like to change about our current HN, and I think you will be very encouraged by what you're going to hear. So if we could have the next slide, and I'll hand back to Val.
That's grand, thank you very much. And I am hugely reassured by some of the recurring themes there. We will take time after this session to go through and review them all fully. And similarly, if you have any questions that you want to pose in the chat as we go through the content today, feel free to do so. And if we don't respond during this session, we will make a point of collating comments and questions and responding where appropriate. So the slide that I'm sharing with you just now then highlights our approach. So we've adopted a culture of service design, and we are using iterative prototyping, and we're obviously looking to deliver effective change and, most importantly, improvement as well. The definition of service design that you have there normally focuses on the customer experience. But we have obviously put the learner very much at the heart of everything that we are doing. I mentioned that prototyping approach, and with that approach comes the development of a minimum viable product. And I just wanted to say a few words about what we mean when we use that term. So we are referring to a version of a product that is given to early users. And that product should contain enough essential features or components of the final product to enable a meaningful prototype delivery. The learning gained from the prototype delivery is going to inform subsequent iterations of the product, and we're going to continually improve our product to make sure that it meets our customer needs, so our learner needs, our end user needs. The core components of continuous improvement and the focus on people resonate with the principles of our NextGen HN project. The pilot delivery approach, and we'll see a bit more about this as we go through the presentation, enables us to learn from a variety of different perspectives, again, importantly, including the learner, deliverers, etc. So it gives a lot of touch points and opportunities for reflection, for review, and changes throughout that cycle. The minimum viable product itself includes, but this may not be a definitive list, is obviously the proposed qualification framework, unit specifications, opportunities to encompass learning for sustainability, our educator guide, and our educator guide is what we normally refer to or previously referred to as a group award specification, and obviously our grading models with rationale as well. Next slide, please. I shared this diagram with you because I thought it was just a really helpful visual reminder of that service design approach. We're in the initial phase of developing our prototypes, producing and piloting qualifications. So you can see there in the second diamond that prototype, test and refine cycle. Next slide, please. Our prototype design parameters are our touchstones. They are our guiding principles. We refer to them as our flexible fences, and naturally, because we are prototyping and we are piloting, everything there, everything that we're doing is there to be tested, to be challenged. But there are some things, as I say, our principles that we refer back to really as touchstones to check what we're doing and to make sure that we are doing things for the right reasons. So I was really reassured to see that we're meeting many of your expectations and dreams and desires for a review of a change to the HN product. I've highlighted the fact here that the HNC and HND are discrete qualifications, both containing 15 credits at level 7 or level 8. We are developing integrated meta skills. You'll be glad to hear that we are looking at larger and fewer units with a significant reduction in assessment load for both learners and staff. The use of technology is embedded and enhance and support assessment. Graded units are out, qualification grading is in, and again we'll say more about that later in the presentation. And we also have a new model of quality assurance that has been is going through prototype development and pilot delivery as we speak. Next slide, please. I shared this slide, a diagram with you. It's an excerpt from our governance diagram. And whilst it isn't the full governance diagram, it's perhaps the section of it that is most front-facing and of particular interest to yourselves today. We have 17 different strands, each focusing on a different area of expertise, each with its own specialism. So meta skills were something that was mentioned in your feedback in the chat, and you'll see there that we have a strand, a development activity specifically dedicated to meta skills, and we have a designated expert within SQA leading on that activity. I'm not going to go through each strand in detail, but just to reassure people, we have that dedicated strand for articulation and progression. We have a strand on learner research and engagement, digital learning and support, etc. So again, I'm just sharing that with you, really to highlight the seriousness with which SQA are treating this project and this development, and to give you an overview of the type of activities that we are engaging in. I'm going to hand over now to Jane, and she will say a few words about phase 1 of our development.
Thank you, Val. Could we have the next slide? Thank you so much. So there will be varying sort of awareness in the audience today about what has been happening so far. So this slide is just a very straightforward explanation of what we've been doing so far in what we're calling phase 1 of the Next Gen development. So to take each of these blocks in the illustration in turn, over the academic session 2020 to 21, we kicked off the development with the development of a number of HNCs and in fact one HND. So for your information, the qualifications that were developed over 2021 are HNC computing, but also actually HND data science. Along with that, there has been HNC engineering, and that has focused on the engineering systems strand of engineering, and also HNC television. And as we are moving into the academic session 2021 to 22, our current session, we have pilot centre delivery, and we currently have over 70 candidates who are enrolled in our HNC television in 2 different pilot centres, which is going to be a really exciting phase for the development. And alongside the HNC pilot delivery, we are of course progressing to the next stage of the development process. So in this academic session, we will be developing a number of the associated HNDs that go along with the HNCs that were developed last session. So, for example, computing options, computing science, networking, those things which grow out of the HNC development, but also HND television, and we may also be developing HND radio production. And as Phase 1 of the development rolls on through these 3 years, in 2022 to 23, so next year, there will be pilot delivery of those HNDs and further HND development. So you can see the pattern there, where we're kicking off with the HNC. We are looking for pilot delivery of that, which will feed iteratively into all other aspects of development. That's a very important part of what Val was talking about earlier in terms of service design principles here. It is iterative. Things are not being developed in silos. They are being developed and testing, and the lessons learned from the testing will feed into our ongoing developments. Thank you. Next slide.
Thank you. So Phase 2 refers to the developments that are commencing this academic year. And the thing that I need to stress from the outset is that need for collaboration and our commitment to collaboration in many forums. So that could be collaboration between SQA and centres, but also centre-to-centre collaboration and collaboration between the two different development types that I'm going on to explain. So you'll see from the diagram that we have SQA-led developments and centre-led developments. Our SQA-led developments are our national developments, and we, SQA in the broadest sense, are responsible for developing them in collaboration with the sector. The subjects that we've identified for Phase 2 are accounting, care, which incorporates childhood practice and social services, fitness, health and exercise, and social sciences. We applied subject selection criteria when we were identifying the areas that we would take forward. So there was quite a list, but some of the key reasons were that our selected programme areas provided an opportunity to test and to stretch the NextGen model and their design parameters that I referred to earlier. We were also looking at areas with existing high take-up and ones that may have regulatory impact. So again, going back to that idea of testing our principles, our parameters, and making sure that they genuinely work for the benefit of all. Our centre-led developments are something that we've introduced for the first time this year. They are a bit more specific and perhaps niche or specialist qualifications. We have 3 centre-led developments in progress as we speak. That's HNCD Agriculture, being led by SRUC, Agricultural Technology, again being led by SRUC, and Horticulture, led by UHI. I'm stressing the led by because although the SRUC and UHI are leading on their developments, we are aware that they are not the only centres delivering those awards. And again, collaboration is absolutely at the heart of the work that they are doing. So all centres delivering those 3 awards, or sorry, 2 awards. I realise agricultural technology is brand new, but all those centres already delivering agriculture and already delivering horticulture will be invited to participate in the qualification design team for that programme. If you can move on to the next slide, please. Thank you. So the diagram that I've shared with you here is our rollout diagram. And I'm aware that there is a huge appetite for change within the sector. There is a huge appetite for change within the NextGen team as well. But I thought this was helpful just to show where we are now with the range of qualifications that we're taking forward, and also the annual rollout and the impact that that has year on year. So to allay fears, we're not expanding our pilot activity at a rate of knots that we can't cope with. We're doing so in a focused and controlled manner, but we're also doing that as quickly as we can. You will have a copy of these slides made available to you, so if you're peering at your screen just now with difficulty, don't worry, it will come out to you after this session. I mentioned our Phase 2 developments and our SQA-led developments. So I realise some people have already submitted their application to be a pilot centre for those awards that I listed earlier. If you haven't already, then the deadline is on the 24th, so just 2 days away, and more information about that can be found on our website. And with no further ado, I'm going to hand over now onto the next slide, so we can explore meta skills.
Thank you, Val. Very brief introduction. I'm Julie Parker. I'm one of the new product development managers on the NextGen core team. I've come from college sector. I've just recently joined SQA in May this year and really excited about this. Coming from the college sector, I know a lot of you will resonate with my own experience that over recent years, employers have been requesting and they highly sought after these skills. We've got them here, meta skills. A lot of you familiar with the terms life skills, transferable skills, and absolutely delighted to see in the chat earlier some of the comments on that focus on professional skills, knowledge and behaviours is what we're focusing on here, industry prep and preparing students for today's modern workplace. So what SQA have done, and with SDS, we've got these meta skills, these 3 domains, self-management, social intelligence and innovation. And I also certainly appreciate that many courses across that you all deliver will include some of these skills, but what we're wanting to provide here is a framework, a structure, so that students can evidence these development of these skills, and also it provides the employers that evidence, that awareness of yes, that's what we can see with the students and of future workforce skills. So we have here included meta skills in NextGen qualification to complement the industry and sector specific content and provide, as I say, a framework for learners to undertake development aligned to these professional practices, behaviours, as well as personal aims. You know, I'll come to it in the next slide in a second, but these personal aims and development that they can actually show and evidence how they have developed these meta skills throughout the course. They're not just going to be delivered one after another, different modules. It's going to be, they can be embedded throughout the whole course, and that's what we're seeing with the pilot delivery that's been mentioned earlier in the presentation. So if we can just move on to the next slide, please. And these meta skills within the NextGen. What I really want to highlight here is collaboration and communication. You know, we really are, I know it's a theme talking about collaboration, but with in this together and where centres can actually collaborate with each other, and that's what we are seeing just now in the pilot delivery on the different approaches, on how we're going to explore and looking at resources for this meta skills development, which is really, really exciting. Also supports projects of varying sizes on here. It allows localised language and development according to, we've got here 3 areas, the sector, the projects, and key for me with NextGen, and what I also resonate closely with is the individual. It's very much learner, student focused qualifications. And what we're seeing just now with the pilot delivery is that students can specialise. They can actually monitor and also look at areas in specific sectors that they may want to specialise. They can identify their strengths, the challenges they may have with the development of some of the meta skills, and with their tutors and with other centre development, and also with collaboration on how we can provide that overall experience for the learner. And also reflecting. Self-journals is one aspect that we're looking at and considering, and what learners are actually really excited about too, and that they can feed back with their tutors and monitor that those meta skills being developed throughout. And I think just to finally finish off here, the learner focus and that individual with the projects and the areas of specialism are the key 3 things that stick out for me with the meta skills and helping with the future skills workforce across Scotland. I'll just hand over now to Jane, who's going to start on grading.
Thanks, Julie. So I think there will be a reasonable amount of interest in this slide if this is a change that you've not been aware of up until now. So just a little bit of background before we launch into these bullet points. There's a substantial amount of both research and engagement and consultation around grading in our new qualifications. And as a result of that, probably one of the most significant changes is that we're going to be moving away from a single graded unit, and instead there will be whole qualification grading. And just to dig into that a little bit, to give you a little bit of insight and background into the thinking behind that. Some of the challenges with our current approach to having a single graded unit in our HNs, for example, the ones that came out where does this skew the delivery of a course towards the graded unit? And that was a pretty consistent bit of feedback, that there was that risk of skewing delivery towards the graded unit. Some learners in particular experiencing a lack of motivation around those units that were not in fact graded. Some examples of grade inflation, perhaps a disproportionate time spent on the graded unit, but we think that probably the most important bit of feedback was actually from learners themselves, who reported that they weren't always confident that their result in the graded unit reflected their overall competence and skills. So quite a significant change coming. No graded unit, and this is being taken forward in our development by the prototyping of 3 approaches to whole qualification grading. I mentioned in the last slide that I spoke to that our developments in the first year have centred around engineering systems and computing and television, and the teams in charge of those developments, of course including qualification design teams and you guys, people from the sector. As a result of that, 3 grading models have been developed, and they are whole qualification grading models. And as we go on into next phases of the development, subsequent teams will have a look at these, they will be available to them, and they will be able to consider which of these models best fits the qualification and the sector that they are working in. So they all offer a variation on a theme to whole qualification grading. And I did just want to highlight to you, I think as one of the slides, we've got a link which takes you to the NextGen HN website. So by the end of September, these 3 prototype grading models will be available on the website, and they will be there for you to have a look at. Please do remember that they are subject to further change and refinement. We're back to that idea of an iterative design process. So as pilot delivery happens, as further qualification development happens, they will be subject to change. They are a prototype, but fundamentally, we are moving away from a single graded unit to models of whole qualification grading. Julie's going to take us through another of the big changes, which is that we have developed grading narratives, which are going to describe the overall performance of candidates at 3 levels.
Thank you. Yeah, the 4th bullet point got the candidates will be graded as achieved, achieved with merit, or achieved with distinction. And just linking back to that sort of culture that we're living in at the moment, the grade inflation, quite often, I know I've been in the classroom where students have said to me, well, what do I need to get distinction? They're just not interested in just achieved. So we want to raise the bar, raise awareness. Achieved is some achievement, is going to be really great to get that grading. So to support that, the grading narratives, these will be short statements to summarise the level of achievement. And it will go into the knowledge, the skills and the behaviour that these students have achieved on that particular grading. So for me too, it's also raising awareness for employers, other stakeholders, internal and external. So right at the outset, that we realise that this achieve status, then achieve with merit and achieve with distinction is 3 very separate grades, and they all are very, very worthwhile, and there's credence there on that achieved one. And again, for the employer's perspective, I think it can be open to interpretation in current HNs, you know, what is a pass, you know, but then this narrative will give the learners the opportunity to expand on those knowledge, skills and behaviours that they have developed in the new Next Gen HN qualification. Thank you, and I think now we move on to the next slide and over to Rachel.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks again, for joining and for sticking with us. My name's Rachel Baird, so I'm the project officer on NextGen. So I support the project both internally and externally. For some of you, this might be the first time that you're hearing about NextGen. Some people, may already know about it. Some of your centres might have even been putting forward applications. But as the kind of project moves, we thought it would be nice today to just share some really nice testimonials that we've had through, from real life people, just so that you can see that there are, people involved in the work and have some really great things to say. Obviously, I'm not going to read everything out word for word, but you can see that we have a testimony here from Alan Moffat, who is a TV and film lecturer at New College, Lanarkshire, which is actually one of the centres who are currently piloting with learners. He mentions that it's an exciting time. It's allowed them to overhaul their curriculum delivery and make it more student focused. He is actually blogging his experience on the New College Lanarkshire website, so we'll share that in the chat. I'll provide a link for that in the moment if anyone wants to have a look at his articles. We've got a quote there from the Quality Enhancement Manager over at Edinburgh College, just saying, how pleased they are with our new approach to QA. And if we just move on to the next slide, we just have a couple more testimonials there. So some of the staff who are just newly involved in our centre-led development have just mentioned that, they're surprised and reassured to see how much resource that we are putting behind it. So they feel very, supported in the work that they're going to be developing this year. And lastly, we have another quote there from John Buglas, who's the Vice Principal of Edinburgh College there, again, just relating to being involved in the television pilot. So this actually draws our presentation section to a close now, where we are going to stop recording. We're going to move on to the Mentimeter section, but feel free to continue popping any questions or comments in